Graduation. It's supposed to be a time of celebration, right? A day that marks a huge milestone in your life. For me, though, it felt more like an obligation, one I wasn't quite sure how to deal with. My name's Harper. I'm 22, and I've just finished my degree at one of the top universities in my state. The ceremony is coming up, but the thought of my parents attending feels, well, impossible. See, the thing is, I had to do it all alone. I was ready to invite my aunt and uncle, Olivia and Peter, and my cousin Leo, who had supported me from day one. But my parents? Not a chance. Let me explain how we got here. It all started back in high school. I remember it like it was yesterday, my parents, Veronica and Mark, sitting me down for one of those family meetings that never end well. It wasn't about my grades or anything I had done wrong, which was a relief. It was about money, and not the kind you expect from people who are supposed to support you. "We've been thinking," my dad began, clearing his throat like he always does when he's about to drop some news I won't like. "We're getting older, and retirement's not going to pay for itself. You're 18 now, you're an adult, and you need to start figuring things out on your own." His words hit me harder than I expected. I knew this moment would come. My parents weren't the kind of people who believed in handouts. They had enough money to live comfortably, but they were always frugal when it came to me. Asking for something felt like a negotiation. Clothes? Only if I'd completely outgrown the last ones. School trips? Well, they'd need a solid reason to justify the expense. And as for college, my mom Veronica was blunt. "We've done enough. You're on your own from here." I wasn't exactly shocked. I had been preparing for it. But that didn't make the blow any less painful. At least I had a backup plan. One person who had always had my back was my Uncle Peter. He was my dad's older brother, and growing up, I spent more weekends with him and Aunt Olivia than with my own parents. They were the kind of family that made you feel like you belonged. Peter was a successful lawyer, and Olivia was a doctor. They didn't have the financial struggles my parents claimed to face. I'd never been that close to my own parents. As I got older, it became clearer, especially when I reached college, that they were too busy with their own lives. My dad, Mark, was always hosting people at our house, making sure everyone knew how well things were going. They rarely had time for me, even at family gatherings. So when I brought up college to Uncle Peter, I didn't expect him to pay my way. I was going to ask him to co-sign a loan, but he cut me off before I could even finish my sentence. "Don't worry about it," he said. "We'll cover the expenses. Focus on your studies, not the bills. Your family." Aunt Olivia agreed immediately, just as supportive as ever. She told me it was no trouble, they wanted to help. Despite my offer to pay them back when I got a job, they refused. They were more than secure financially, and they were happy to support me. Fast forward to now, graduation day, looming. I had already bought my tickets. 3 of them, one for Aunt Olivia, one for Uncle Peter, and one for Leo. I didn't even think about my parents. To be honest, I didn't expect them to care. After all, for the past few years, they hadn't shown any interest in my life, beyond what I could provide for them in status and social standing. I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of being a part of my success. Then, of course, the phone call came. It was a Tuesday afternoon. My mom, Veronica, called first. She asked about my classes, how I was feeling about graduation. I could tell she was just going through the motions. Her voice didn't sound excited. It sounded rehearsed, like she was trying to act like she cared. When my dad got on the phone, I already knew where this was going. So, he started, "Have you decided who you're inviting to the ceremony?" A knot tightened in my stomach. I knew exactly what he was getting at. "I already invited Uncle Peter, Aunt Olivia, and Leo," I said, trying to sound casual. There was a long silence. And then, in a voice I hadn't heard in years, sharp, angry, my mom said, "You didn't invite us?" The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I tried to explain, to say the truth, that the tickets were limited and that the auditorium wasn't big enough for everyone. But my dad interrupted, his voice rising. "I've been bragging about you to everyone, Harper. Everyone. Telling them how proud I am about your college, how amazing you're doing. Do you know how embarrassed I'll be if I'm not even there?" That was when everything I had been holding back just broke. I couldn't take it anymore. "You've never asked me about college in 4 years, I snapped. "You haven't even cared enough to show up at any point in my life. You were too busy with your friends, with your dinners and parties. You told me I was on my own. You told me that I had to take care of myself. that you weren't paying for anything. You made your choice." My mom's voice was shrill now. "We gave you everything. A roof over your head, clothes on your back." "Barely," I retorted. "You didn't do anything more than the minimum. And then, when I needed help, you told me to figure it out." Uncle Peter and Aunt Olivia are the ones who have been there for me. They're the ones who supported me, who made sure I didn't give up. I slammed the phone down, my hands shaking. I immediately blocked their numbers. I needed to talk to someone. I called Uncle Peter. He listened. No interruptions, just letting me vent. When I finished, his calm voice reassured me. "You did what you had to do, Harper," he said. "Don't doubt yourself for a second. You're part of our family, and we're proud of you." The next few days were a blur. After hanging up on my parents, I sat in my room, staring at the walls like I could somehow will the situation to be different. But it wasn't. The truth was clear. My parents didn't want to be part of my life on their own terms. They only wanted to be involved when it was convenient for them, when it suited their social image. I didn't check my phone for hours, and when I did, I found a flood of texts and missed calls from numbers I didn't even recognize. Family members, some of my childhood friends, even distant relatives, all asking if I was okay, expressing their support or confusion. My parents had clearly spread the story, but I wasn't ready to deal with any of it. Not yet. The pain of rejection, of feeling unseen for so long, didn't just disappear. I didn't know if it would ever truly fade. But in that moment, I didn't want to hide my emotions. I needed to speak out. I needed to reclaim my space, my life. I called Uncle Peter the next morning. His voice, as always, was a comfort. "Harper, don't let them get to you. You've worked so hard. They made their choices. You didn't make any of this up. It's real. Now, you've got to keep moving forward." His words settled into me like an anchor in a storm. I knew that I couldn't let them pull me back. I had to stay true to myself, even if it meant hurting for a while longer. I spent the next few days in a haze of preparation. I still had schoolwork to finish, a job to find, and graduation was creeping up on me. But my mind kept circling back to one thing: the way my parents had twisted everything. How they had made me feel guilty for wanting something I had earned. It didn't sit right with me. Not for 1 second. Then came the email. The one I hadn't expected, but somehow I knew it was coming. It was from my dad. Not that I hadn't already blocked their numbers. Email was the only way they could contact me now. The subject line: "We need to talk, Harper." I almost laughed, a bitter, cynical laugh that I didn't know I had in me. What did they want now? An apology? No, that wouldn't come. This email was just another attempt to manipulate me, to turn things around so they could control the narrative. I opened it, knowing full well that this would be another exercise in gaslighting. The email was long. It started with a lot of flowery language about how much they had given me and how disappointed they were in my actions. The usual complaints about how I hadn't appreciated all the sacrifices they made for me and how they had been so proud of me. He claimed that he'd been bragging about me to all his friends, sharing my accomplishments only for me to turn around and reject him. It was so manipulative, so familiar. My dad always knew how to twist things. He could make you feel like the bad guy in your own story. He claimed that they didn't want to make things public, but that I had forced their hand by acting out. There were lines in there about how I was being manipulated by Uncle Peter and Aunt Olivia, how I didn't understand their real love for me. I felt nauseous reading it. How dare he? In the last paragraph, there was an almost pleading tone. He asked me to unblock their numbers and said that he and my mom would accept whatever punishment I thought was fair. They wanted to be there for my graduation. They claimed they could be humble and not post anything on social media, as though that was the issue, as if their reputation, their image, was all that mattered to them. I closed the email and stared at the screen. Every word felt like it was dripping with insincerity. They weren't sorry. Not really. This was a tactic, a last-ditch effort to manipulate me back into their fold so they could claim the role they had never earned. But this time, I wasn't falling for it. I didn't respond. Instead, I called Uncle Peter again, who had already received an email of his own. I told him everything, and he listened with the same calm understanding he always had. I felt a little lighter just speaking my truth aloud. "Don't give them the satisfaction, Harper," he said, his voice steady but firm. They're trying to control you with guilt. Don't let them. We'll figure this out together. At that moment, I realized something crucial. I didn't need my parents. Not in the way they wanted me to need them. I didn't need their approval to feel worthy of my accomplishments. They had stripped me of my sense of self for so long, telling me who I was allowed to be, what I was supposed to do, and who I was supposed to impress. But I wasn't their pawn anymore. I was my own person, and it was time to embrace that fully. 2 days passed, and I couldn't shake the feeling of impending doom. Graduation was getting closer, and the weight of my decision of cutting ties with my parents still lingered. But in the pit of my stomach, I knew I had done the right thing. I wasn't going to allow myself to be treated like a commodity. I wasn't going to let them control this moment, the most important day of my life, just because they felt entitled to it. I couldn't stop thinking about my aunt and uncle. Their love had never been conditional. I didn't feel like a burden when I was with them. I felt supported, not because they had to, but because they truly wanted to see me succeed. On the evening before the ceremony, I sat down with Aunt Olivia and Uncle Peter at their house. Leo, my cousin, had already left for his place, and it was just the three of us sitting around the dinner table. It felt like home. The way they all looked at me, their smiles warm and genuine, made me feel more than ready to face tomorrow. I finally felt the love and the acceptance that had been missing from my own parents for years. The next morning, I slipped into my graduation gown, standing in front of the mirror for a moment. The nerves hit me full force, but I pushed them down. It wasn't about impressing anyone else. It was about me, about the years of hard work and sacrifice I'd put in. It was about celebrating my accomplishments, not for anyone's approval, but for myself. "Let's go, Harper," Uncle Peter said, his voice breaking through the silence. "It's your time." The morning of graduation arrived. It was one of those days where everything felt like it was teetering on the edge of something monumental. I stood in front of the mirror, pulling on my cap and gown, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a strange mix of excitement and fear. This wasn't just a milestone. It was the end of something huge, and the beginning of something else entirely. I didn't care about what my parents would think anymore. As I buttoned my gown and adjusted my tassel, I realized how long it had been since I had truly made a decision for myself. This day, this moment, was mine and mine alone. No one could take it from me. Uncle Peter and Aunt Olivia were waiting for me in the living room. The pride in their eyes, the way they exchanged knowing glances as I walked in, made everything feel right. This was the family I'd always needed, the ones who supported me, not out of obligation, but because they genuinely cared. Leo, my cousin, was already in the car. He'd been up late finishing a project for work, but he was as excited as anyone to see me walk across that stage. Despite the craziness of it all, having them there, the people who had truly shown up for me, felt like everything had finally come full circle. As we drove to the university, the tension in the air seemed to settle, almost like a fog lifting. I didn't know how I'd been living with that constant undercurrent of dread for so long. It was always there, like a weight in the pit of my stomach, waiting for my parents to call, to make everything feel like it wasn't my own life anymore. But not today. Today, I was free. When we arrived at the auditorium, the atmosphere was electric. There were families everywhere, students excitedly chatting with friends, professors greeting former pupils with pride. I felt the buzz of it all deep in my chest. But it wasn't just excitement, it was relief. I was here. I had made it. The journey was mine, and no one could take that away from me. I took my seat, glancing around at the sea of faces. My classmates were buzzing with anticipation, and I couldn't help but feel a little sentimental. This was it, the final chapter of my college experience. But as the ceremony began, with the endless speeches and applause, there was still something gnawing at me, a tiny flicker of fear that I couldn't completely shake. Halfway through, my phone buzzed. I glanced down at the screen and my stomach dropped. It was a message from an unknown number. Before I could even stop myself, I opened it. It was a screenshot, a post from my father. I could barely breathe as I read through the long, bitter rant about how ungrateful I was. He went on to claim that I had abandoned him and my mother in favor of my selfish relatives. It didn't stop there. The post included private details about my relationship with Aunt Olivia and Uncle Peter, twisting them into accusations of manipulation. It felt like everything I had worked so hard to build, everything I had fought for, was suddenly being dragged through the mud. I stared at the phone in disbelief. It was like the walls were closing in around me. My parents had actually taken it to social media, and it wasn't just a little post. They had shared the same thing on multiple platforms, with photos of me from past family gatherings, pictures where I had been genuinely happy. And in every post, they painted themselves as victims, as though they were the ones who had been wronged. My first instinct was to respond, to clear the air, to make them stop. But the more I read, the more I realized this wasn't about me anymore. It wasn't about clearing up misunderstandings. This was about them, about their need to control, to paint themselves as the perfect parents to the world, even if it meant destroying me in the process. Don't react, I muttered to myself. Don't react. They want you to. I quickly closed the message, my hands shaking as I tried to steady my breathing. The ceremony was still ongoing, but I couldn't focus. My mind was a storm of emotions: anger, betrayal, disbelief. How could they do this to me? And why? All they had done was hurt me, time and time again, and now they were using my graduation to further their agenda. I texted Leo quickly, "I need you to help me keep this out of my mind for now. I can't let it ruin today." A few minutes later, Leo appeared beside me, his expression softening when he saw the look on my face. He didn't ask questions. He didn't need to. Instead, he just squeezed my shoulder, a silent promise of support. When it was finally my turn to walk across the stage, everything seemed to slow down. My heart was pounding, but it wasn't out of fear, it was out of something else entirely. It was out of pride. I was walking across that stage, not for my parents, but for me. For the girl who had fought through every obstacle, every rejection, every moment of feeling less than. This moment was mine. Uncle Peter and Aunt Olivia cheered louder than anyone else in the auditorium. Their faces were filled with pride, and it was like the world shrank to just the three of us. The crowd was a blur. The applause was muffled in my ears as I took my diploma and turned toward them, smiling. For once, I felt like I truly belonged. But as I exited the stage, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was an email from my father. I couldn't stop myself from opening it. It was even worse than the social media posts. The email was long and full of backhanded apologies, but there was a distinct tone of manipulation in every sentence. He claimed that he and my mother had only done what they thought was best for me. He accused me of being ungrateful for everything they had sacrificed, and went on about how this had ruined the family dynamic. He begged me to unblock their numbers and to send them tickets. He claimed that the only reason they hadn't been invited was because I had chosen Aunt Olivia and Uncle Peter over them. It was so typical, so manipulative. But this time, it didn't hurt. Not like it used to. I just felt numb, like I had already moved on. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The truth was, I didn't owe them anything. They had made their choices, and I had made mine. I wasn't going to let them rewrite my story, not anymore. I spent the rest of the day celebrating with the people who had truly been there for me. We went to a local restaurant afterward, the one Uncle Peter had booked months ago, and I felt like a weight had been lifted from my chest. I was surrounded by love, genuine, honest love, the kind that had never come with strings attached. Later that evening, as I was sitting in the back seat of Uncle Peter's car, looking out at the stars, I thought about the future, about everything I had just gone through, everything I had learned. I wasn't afraid anymore. My parents' control over me had ended. My journey had only just begun, and I was going to make sure I built it on my own terms. This was my moment, and nothing at all, could take that away from me. The next few days after graduation were a strange mix of relief and tension. I felt lighter, more free than I had in years, yet something still lingered in the air, a sense of unfinished business. My phone stayed silent for the most part, and with every day that passed without my parents reaching out, I couldn't help but feel both grateful and sad. It was like they had given up, or maybe they were waiting for me to crack, to beg them to come back into my life. But that wasn't going to happen, not anymore. I kept myself busy. The job search was in full swing, and though the process was stressful, I felt motivated. It wasn't just about finding something to pay the bills. It was about taking control. My life was mine now. No one else had the right to dictate it, not even my parents. But then the silence broke. It was a Saturday afternoon when I saw the notification pop up on my phone. An email. From my dad again. I froze, my heart racing, knowing full well what I would find. It had been a week since his last message. He'd stopped bombarding me with texts, but I knew this email wouldn't be any different than the others. I opened it anyway, and sure enough, there it was. Another long message full of justifications, more attempts at guilt-tripping, and another barrage of manipulative words. But this time, it was different in one key way. My dad had upped the stakes. This email wasn't just about my graduation or the tickets. No, now he was threatening to drag this whole thing into court. "We've tried to reach out and repair things, Harper," he wrote. "But clearly you're not interested in mending our relationship. Your aunt and uncle have poisoned your mind, and now we have no choice but to involve the law to ensure that we're not excluded from your life." I blinked, my fingers trembling as I read on. They were threatening me? My parents were going to take this to a whole new level? They weren't even pretending anymore. They weren't just hurt and upset. They were desperate. They needed to regain control of the narrative. They will be held accountable for their actions, the email continued, with an arrogance that felt like a slap in the face. "We're considering legal action for defamation and interference with our family. You'll be hearing from our lawyer soon." I sat there for a moment, the email still open on my phone, and let the words sink in. Part of me was shocked. The other part, it wasn't surprised at all. This was just another attempt to force me into submission, to make me feel guilty for choosing my own path, for choosing my family over them. They were trying to turn the tables again, trying to make me the villain. But there was something else in that message that struck me even harder. Something I hadn't anticipated. It was the last line of the email. "We're not the only ones who want to talk to you, Harper. Your cousin Leo has been in contact with us. We'll leave it to him to decide which family he wants to be part of. He's the only one who's been making any effort to reach out. We'll be waiting." I couldn't believe it. Leo? My cousin, the one who had always had my back, the one who had been there for me when I needed someone? He was caught in the middle of all this? My heart sank as I read the words again. Leo has been in contact with them? I didn't want to believe it, but deep down, I knew it was possible. Leo had always been the peacemaker in the family, the one who tried to smooth things over when tensions rose. But now I wasn't so sure. What had he said to them? What kind of pressure had they put on him? My mind raced with questions I couldn't answer. I called Leo immediately, my hands shaking as I dialed his number. It rang 3 times before he picked up. "Harper?" he answered, his voice calm but tired. "Leo, what the hell is going on?" I blurted out. "What did you tell them? Why are they dragging you into this?" There was a long pause on the other end, and I could almost feel him hesitating. But when he spoke again, his voice was tight, strained. "Harper, I didn't want to get involved. I swear I didn't." But they were persistent. They kept calling, asking about you, asking about why you weren't talking to them. They even said they'd get a lawyer involved. They said you were ungrateful and that you'd been brainwashed. It's all gotten out of hand. I felt a wave of frustration wash over me. Brainwashed? Seriously? This is what they're saying now? "I don't agree with them," Leo said quickly. "I told them I wasn't going to choose sides. I told them that I wouldn't get caught in the middle. But I couldn't just ignore them completely. They're my parents too, Harper. I didn't want to cause any more drama. I don't need you to protect them." I shot back, my voice sharper than I intended. "I don't need them in my life. They've made their choice. Don't you see that?" "I know," Leo sighed. "I know, Harper, but I also know their family, and it's hard, okay? It's hard to watch this happen to you, to watch you go through all of this. But I don't want to lose you too. I want things to go back to the way they were. I want to see you happy." His words hit me like a ton of bricks. Of course, Leo wanted things to go back to normal, but the truth was, there was no normal left for me. The family I had known, the one I had hoped for, the one I had tried to build with my parents, had shattered. And no matter how much I loved Leo, no matter how much I wanted him to understand, he couldn't just undo everything that had happened. "Leo," I said, my voice softer now, "you have to understand something. I'm done. I'm done pretending like they're the family I need. They're toxic. They've been toxic for years, and they never cared enough to change. You don't have to choose sides, but I have. I've made my choice. I heard him exhale, a sound of resignation, and then a long pause. I get it, Harper, he said quietly. I'm sorry. I closed my eyes for a moment, feeling a heavy weight lift off my shoulders. I had said it. I had set the boundaries I needed. It wasn't about punishing my parents. It wasn't about proving a point. It was about me, about taking control of my life. And for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was in control. The email, the phone call, the threats, they didn't matter anymore. The only thing that mattered was what I was going to do next. And I knew exactly what I needed to do: keep moving forward. I hung up the phone and leaned back against the couch, closing my eyes. The battle wasn't over, I knew that. But for the first time, I wasn't afraid of it anymore. I was ready to face whatever came next. My parents had tried to break me, but I was stronger than that. I had my own family now, one that had shown up for me when it counted. And I wasn't going to let anyone, not even my own blood, take that away. The days following my conversation with Leo felt like a strange, painful silence had descended over everything. My parents' threats had not stopped, but I had already made up my mind. There was no going back. I knew I couldn't let their words drag me into the chaos they were so desperate to create. Every message, every phone call, every email from them was just another attempt to bring me back into their web of manipulation. But this time, I wasn't falling for it. I'd taken a week off from work to decompress, mostly focusing on setting my life up the way I wanted. New job applications were flooding my inbox, and I spent my time polishing my resume, practicing interview skills, and looking for places to live. I needed to get out. I needed to separate myself completely from the toxic cycle my parents had perpetuated for years. But even though I was busy with all of these forward-moving things, I still couldn't shake the feeling of unease every time my phone buzzed. The notifications, the emails, it was as if my parents had decided to make my life their battleground. I had been so confident at first, but now it felt like I was standing on the edge of something that might collapse at any moment. One day, as I was sifting through a list of apartments, my phone buzzed again. Another email, another long-winded rant from my dad, but this time, something in the subject line caught my eye. It read, "I'm done with the games, Harper. Time for real consequences." I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to prepare myself for whatever new level of manipulation I was about to face. The message was long, but the first few sentences were enough to tell me everything I needed to know. He was escalating. He no longer cared about making peace. This was about control. "Harper," he started, his words dripping with that familiar false concern. "We've tried everything to reach you, to be there for you, but you continue to shut us out. This is no longer just about a few misunderstandings. We've spoken to a lawyer. You are making a huge mistake by choosing your aunt and uncle over us." I could practically hear the self-righteousness in his words, like a cold edge cutting through the message. He didn't stop there. He went on to accuse me of being influenced by people who didn't have my best interests at heart, people who were turning me against my own flesh and blood. I wanted to laugh, but the anger was boiling beneath the surface, the rage that I'd held in for so long finally bubbling up. How dare he? How dare they try to make me feel like the villain? They were the ones who abandoned me. They were the ones who left me to fend for myself. I had been on my own for years, emotionally abandoned, and now they wanted to pretend like they were the ones suffering. I skimmed through the rest of the email, but it all sounded the same. More threats, more accusations. This was getting out of hand. But there was something else in there that stopped me cold. He wasn't just threatening legal action anymore. He was pulling another card, the one he knew would hurt the most. "Your mother and I," the email continued, "are considering a public statement about you and your choices. We are prepared to go public with how you've treated us, with how you've chosen to abandon your family. We won't let you destroy everything we've built, Harper. You'll regret this." I read that last line over and over again, as if seeing it again and again would somehow make it less painful. But it didn't. It felt like a final blow. A deliberate attempt to humiliate me, to shame me in front of everyone I knew. I was furious, but I was also afraid. They were willing to destroy everything I had worked for, all to punish me for choosing to live my life on my own terms. I had to do something. I couldn't just sit back and let them wreck me. They didn't have the power over me anymore, not like they thought they did. I quickly forwarded the email to Uncle Peter, explaining what had happened, what my dad was threatening. His response was immediate and decisive. "Don't worry about them, Harper. This is all a tactic to try to control you. You've made the right decision, and you need to keep moving forward. We've got your back." His words were like a balm to my frayed nerves. I didn't need to feel guilty. I didn't need to let my parents' attempts at guilt and manipulation control my emotions. I had a support system now, a real one, and I wasn't about to let them take that from me. That afternoon, I decided it was time to respond. Not to my parents, there was no need. They had nothing left to say that would change my mind. But to myself, I needed to take control of this situation before it consumed me. I spent the next few hours drafting a response. It wasn't long, just a few short sentences, but they were words I had needed to say for years. Words that I had never allowed myself to speak before. "I am not the villain in your story," I wrote. "I am not the one who abandoned anyone. I have made my choices, and I stand by them. You no longer get to control my life. I am moving forward without your interference. You will not drag me into your games. I am done." Once I hit send, a weight seemed to lift from my shoulders. It wasn't a victory, not in the way I expected, but it was a step toward closure, a way to release all the years of anger and confusion and helplessness that had built up in me. For the first time, I felt like I was taking control of my future. I thought that would be the end of it, but it wasn't. 2 days later, I got a call from Leo. His voice was tight with something I couldn't place. "Harper," he said, "I think you need to know what happened." "What is it?" I asked, my heart racing. "Your parents went public," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "They've posted everything about you, about how you've betrayed them, about how you've chosen to cut them out. It's all over Facebook. They're telling everyone that you're being manipulated and that they're the ones who've been wronged." I closed my eyes, a sharp pang of frustration slicing through me. It wasn't over. They weren't going to stop. But hearing Leo's voice, hearing the concern in it, I realized something. This wasn't about me anymore. It was about them. They were the ones who had to deal with their own guilt, their own shame, their own insecurities. They were the ones desperately trying to keep control. I didn't need to fight their battle anymore. It wasn't my job to make them understand. It was their job to accept that they had lost. I hung up the phone and sat there for a while, just breathing. I had fought for my independence, for my right to be my own person, and no matter what they did, I wasn't going to give that up. They could write whatever they wanted. They could lie and manipulate all they wanted. But I had nothing to prove to them. Not anymore. A few weeks had passed since my parents had gone public with their accusations. The storm they had tried to stir up seemed to have settled into a strange, almost unnerving quiet. At first, it felt like a weight was pressing down on me. Every notification, every buzz of my phone made me wonder if another attack was coming, if the next message would be another attempt to drag me back into their drama. But then, nothing came. The world didn't stop spinning. People went on with their lives, and I realized something. I had gone on with my life too. The hurt, the anger, the confusion, they were still there, but they no longer controlled me. They had lost their power over me, and I hadn't even realized how much they had been suffocating me until I felt the space to breathe. I woke up one morning to the soft hum of my alarm clock and stretched, feeling the warmth of the sun already creeping through my bedroom window. I had moved into a small one-bedroom apartment about a week ago. It was nothing extravagant, but it felt like a victory. It felt like my first real step into a life that was mine, one that didn't come with strings attached, one where I was free to make my own decisions without worrying about the judgment or manipulation of anyone. The apartment had been empty at first. It had that sterile feeling of something new, but with every piece of furniture I bought, every picture I hung on the wall, it started to feel like home. I had a cat now, a little tabby named Milo, who was already proving to be more trouble than he was worth. But I didn't mind. He kept me company when I felt lonely, and in those quiet moments, he reminded me that I wasn't really alone. I had built this life for myself, and it was enough. I was on my way to a job interview one morning, When I saw the familiar email alert flashing on my phone, I almost ignored it. I was so used to the silence, so used to the thought that my parents had moved on. But something in me, some stubborn part of me, needed to see what it was. It was from Leo. I opened the email, already feeling a knot form in my stomach. But when I started reading, I realized this wasn't the same kind of message I had been getting from my parents. It wasn't filled with accusations or threats. Instead, it was Leo, apologizing for the confusion and telling me that he had distanced himself from my parents. He said he realized that they were wrong in how they treated me, and that he regretted being caught in the middle of it all. It was short, but it felt like a breath of fresh air. Leo was on my side, and I knew deep down that he had always been, even if he hadn't fully understood it until now. The email ended with something that made me smile despite everything. I know this doesn't fix things, but I'm here, Harper. I always will be. You don't have to face this alone. I felt a surge of emotion. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel the weight of my parents' rejection. Leo's message didn't erase the past, but it gave me something I hadn't realized I was missing. Reassurance that I wasn't the only one who saw through the facade my parents had built. It was a small thing, but in that moment, it was enough. I wasn't as alone as I had thought. That evening, after my interview, which went better than expected, by the way, I sat in my living room with Milo curled up in my lap. I opened my laptop and responded to Leo's email. I appreciate what you said. It means more than you know. I'm not mad at you. You didn't ask for any of this. I understand now that you were just trying to keep the peace. But the truth is, I can't go back. I've made my peace with everything, and I'm ready to move forward. I hope you can understand that. I'm happy you're on my side. I clicked send, leaned back, and let out a deep breath. In the past, I would have spent hours second-guessing my words, wondering if I had said too much or not enough. But not now. Now I felt solid in my decision. The journey I had been through was painful, but it had shaped me into someone I could respect, someone I could finally stand behind. The next few days were busy, but not in the frantic, anxiety-filled way my life used to be. I started settling into the rhythm of adult life, job searching, running errands, cooking my own meals, spending evenings watching Netflix or reading, simple things, but things that felt like freedom to me. I'd never realized how much of my life had been dictated by my parents' expectations until I was finally living on my own terms. One afternoon, as I was walking back from the grocery store, my phone buzzed again. I checked the message, expecting it to be another work-related update, or maybe a text from Leo, but it wasn't. It was from my mom, Veronica. It took me a moment to gather my thoughts before opening the message. Part of me wanted to block her number right then and there, just to avoid whatever chaos she might bring. But the other part of me, the one that had been through so much already, told me to read it, to see what she had to say. I opened the message. It was short. I'm sorry, Harper. I don't expect you to forgive us, but I want you to know that I regret the way things have gone. I was wrong. I'll always love you, and I hope we can find a way to move forward. Please, call me when you're ready. For a long time, I stared at the screen. I wasn't sure what I had expected from her. Some kind of grand apology, perhaps. Or a request to fix everything as if it had been so easily broken. But this felt almost too little, too late. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I set my phone down and went about my evening. I wasn't ready to dive into the complexities of my relationship with my mom just yet. Maybe I never would be. But the important thing was, I didn't feel the overwhelming need to fix things anymore. I didn't feel guilty for needing space. I wasn't ready to welcome them back into my life. Not without genuine change, not without accountability. I had learned one of the hardest lessons of all, that sometimes, walking away isn't just a decision for survival. It's a decision for your own peace. The next morning, I did something I hadn't expected. I picked up the phone, called Leo, and let him know that I had received a message from my mom. He listened quietly, as he always did, before responding. I think you're doing the right thing, Harper. Take your time. I'm proud of you. And I'm here, no matter what. That was all I needed to hear. I wasn't going to rush into anything. I had already done enough of that in the past. I was ready to keep moving forward on my own terms, with no one's expectations clouding my judgment. For the first time in years, I felt free. Story 2. Mom wants to send me to military school in order to defend my sister for stealing from me. I was 14 when this occurred. My parents split around a year ago, give or take that amount of time. My younger sister was always squandering her money like it was water, particularly on hot topic clothing, cosmetics, mall food, and video games. However, I also had an allowance. My sister never did anything unless her father was around to watch over her, so he had me earn additional money by cleaning the home and performing garden chores. She was also never forced to do any chores by my mother, unless it was cleaning her room in order to earn additional money. I did various odd jobs around the neighborhood, including mowing lawns and collecting trash cans to cash in for the 5-cent deposit. I was accumulating money at the time to get a scooter so I could go about town. I was able to accumulate almost $2,000 over the course of 2 years by working at our jobs and saving the majority of my stipend. However, building up that amount of money was not simple. Primarily due to my sister, she would take from my money stockpile since she was aware of all the small hiding spots I used. Here's a summary of what I recall that highlights the main points. Hello, sister. Have you stolen my money once more? Sis? What? And no. When caught in a fib, she used to stammer. Me? You are an awful liar. $100 is gone from my funds. Sister, get away from me. It wasn't me. Feigns tears and rushes to his mother. Mommy, sis, my brother is making fun of me. Me? Once more, she embezzled from my funds. Mom begins to snap at me with her fingers. Quit talking. You notice that Mama's little child is sad, don't you? She didn't do it because she stated she didn't. There is nothing more to it than that. Therefore, don't let this to bother you. Me? I'm certain she did it, and I'll ask Dad for assistance if you don't receive the money back. That's not necessary anymore, Mom. Besides, you have no evidence. Your money was stolen by her. Yes, I do, myself. For every dollar I contribute to it, I maintain a record. 3 days earlier, the sum was in foreign currency. Only the 12th remains now. As you are aware, she has already stolen from my funds many times, and $100 is gone. Furthermore, I am aware that Sis has already used up her whole allotment for this month. But yesterday you took her shopping. Where did you obtain that sum of money? From her mother. Mom ponders for a moment, then frowns. What do you know? You've been grounded. I'll grab the belt, or you may go to your room. I could have continued the argument, but if I took away anything from that home, it was to know when to cut the conversation short and simply call my father. I went to my room and closed the door without saying anything further to either of them. I then called my dad at work using my little brick Nokia cell phone from back then. I left a message explaining everything because he didn't answer. An hour or so later, he contacted me again and promised to resolve the issue. My mom was shouting at my dad on the phone in the kitchen. Shortly after, I heard the landline house phone ring. Other than my mother attempting to defend her behavior, which never succeeded when she was at fault, I didn't hear much of her trying to listen for my room. She ultimately yelled something to the tune of fine. Since she has already spent the money, you can reimburse her if she actually stole it. My mother then screamed at me while throwing open my door. You little ingrate, I can't believe you betrayed me. I do all of this for you. You couldn't ignore me for a small amount of money. Then you acknowledge that my sister took it? Mom sneers. I don't care, you know. Compared to males, girls require more money. In any case, you ought to give it to her. Even so, there wasn't much. Me. You are aware that it was more than a small sum of money. I would still want the $100 stat she took back, even if it was only $1. Your pocketbook is something you wouldn't want stolen. If my sister steals, it doesn't make a difference. You are aware of her guilt. In one way or another, I want that money back. I put a lot of effort into it, and she accomplished nothing. There's nothing for my kid to do, Mom. She should be treated like a princess because she is one. Me? I have no problem with it. She may go be a princess without me or my belongings. Mom, you little shit, that's it. Your ass will be beaten by me. I get up and turn to face her. Because of all the outside labor I was doing, I was already as tall as her at the age of 14. I was also rather powerful. Feel free to give it a try. Since I did nothing wrong, I won't let you. After a minute of inaction, My mother roared and swung her arm in an attempt to knock something off my dresser, but she swung too low and struck the dresser itself, which I'm sure hurt a lot. She was glaring at me and gnashing her teeth as she grasped her hand in an attempt to contain the pain. She simply turned around and left after that, as she proceeded down the hall, down the stairs, and into the kitchen to do what she always does. When she doesn't get her way, go to her wine fridge and get drunk, I heard her create a commotion, screaming and slapping the wall. Watching me from her bedroom door, my sister gave me a scared look before running back inside and slamming the door. The fact that Mom was her go-to person for getting away with the things she did to me was rapidly changing. When my dad got home from work a few hours later, he dragged my sister into my room so she could visit me. After forcing her to confess to stealing from me, he informed me that I was not grounded. My dad kept telling her to speak up till she was virtually shouting it, but sis refused to even look at me during the entire time she was being forced to apologize. At first, she did it in the quietest, squeaky voice. Dad then gave me a $100 note to make up for what my sister had taken, told her that she would be grounded for a week and that the money would be deducted from her allowance. My sister began to cry and call her father a jerk before she fled to her room. My mom ignored all of us while drinking her favorite wine and sitting on the back patio. She never expressed regret to me, and occasionally even pretended that nothing had occurred. In addition, my sister received her next allowance in any case. However, my mother handed it to her at that time rather than my father. On my dad's day off from work a few days later, we drove to a nearby store where he got me a combination safe to hold my cash and other little items. My sister and mother were not informed that I had it. The code was set to 4 digits. I believe the code I used at the time was 4,962. After locking the safe and placing all of my money inside, I tucked it away in the back of my closet. After a few weeks, I returned after mowing the lawns of a few neighbors to discover my room had been looted. I informed my mother over the phone about what sis had done to my room. Naturally, Mom denied it. My infant didn't do this, Mom. Me? Okay, so did you? Mom? No. Since there was nobody else in the room and it was spotless when I left, it must only have been one of you. Mom was clearly irritated at being logically caught. All right, but what would it matter if she did? You weren't being better to her anyhow, so it was inevitable. Then hurried away. I gave my dad another call and left a follow-up message on his work answering machine, explaining what had transpired. After that, I went to my sister's room and informed her that I knew she was the one who had destroyed my room. Before she could respond, I told her that I had put my money in a safe and that she could no longer access it. She had a complete fit about that. Naturally, evil Mama Bear immediately rushed to her aid. However, I just reiterated that my sister was no longer able to access my money and returned to my room to tidy up as she screamed for the next 20 minutes or so in her room. It was all flung and strewn around, yet nothing was truly destroyed or gone. I gathered everything up and returned everything to its original state. To be honest, it was the youngest I had ever felt as I was cleaning my room. But the next day I discovered everything had ripped up once more, and my window was shattered as well. Sis couldn't open the safe, so she threw it out the window. I immediately contacted my father, and my sister proudly confessed to doing it when both of my parents returned from their jobs. My dad rebuffed my mother's attempt to defend her by claiming that I shouldn't have obtained the safe in the first place, claiming that he did so because he was fed up with my sister robbing me each time she took money from me and spent it. My mom would never pay me back, so my dad had to. My dad purchased me a lock for my door and even a combination key lock box that held the key to my room next to the door, since we had to replace the entire window in my room. After smashing my window, my sister was grounded for a month and stayed in her room pouting whenever her father was home. Until my dad came off work, Mom always allowed her resume her favorite activities, such as watching TV or playing video games. I knew that if I had spoken out, my mother and sister would have gone out of their way to make me even more unhappy, so I didn't bother. When my sister's month-long suspension ended, she started pleading with me for money each time she used up her whole allowance. But since she never saves anything, I simply pointed out that she would never be able to repay it. I also made an IOU to see if she would sign it later in front of her father, just for kicks. Mom would attempt to get me to pay for her, but I would simply remind her what Dad would do. She tore the paper in two and went to her tears again, complaining that I was being cruel to her. I thus refused to give my sister any more money if she requested it. My father forbade my mother from sending me to military school after this. In addition, I'm not sure why my dad didn't assist me in opening a savings account at the time. We just did it that way, I suppose, saving it in cash. An update on the occasion, I had my mother stroll straight through my door. My dad handed me a safe for my money shortly after that. My sister tossed my safe through the window of my bedroom, so he also gave me a deadbolt lock for my door with a wall-mounted lockbox that needed a code to obtain the key. While my mother and sister were away, we worked together to install the lock and lockbox. When my sister initially returned and passed my room, I watched her glance at the lock before rushing to fetch her mother. My dad and I greeted them both as they bounded up the stairs. I have paraphrased the following based on my memory. Mom points and snaps her fingers a couple of times. What on earth is that? Is that a lock for the door? I know what the devil it is, Mom. Dad, why is it there? Because you never feel the need to stop our daughter from rifling through Craggle's room or punishing him for stealing. The lock remains in place from now on. He's just 14, Mom, and my home is here. The door cannot be locked by him. This is our home, Dad. However, I paid the majority of the mortgage and the bills as of the last time I looked. You barely make any payments. And I'm sick of you giving your daughter so much preference. As a result, the Craggle continues to suffer. Mom! Then I insist that you provide me with a lockbox code. At least. Dad. Deadpan look. That's not what I'm doing. I can no longer trust you because of what you've done. Then Mom lost it and bounded down the steps. After standing there looking sulky, my sister moved slowly to her room. The new lock worked well, and I started locking it each time I left my bedroom as a habit. When I entered the code to obtain the key, I frequently saw my mother and sister gazing at me, but I always took care to cover their view with my hand or body. That truly didn't sit well with them. However, they were unable to stop it. Then, towards the end of the month, my sister came to me and begged for $40 so that she could get a video game. She was really interested in me. You keep coming to me, but why? To request funds? When both you and I are aware that you will never repay it? I'll repay you, sis, I promise. Me? No, you won't. Every month, you spend all you own and then some. And instead of repaying me, you would prefer to simply waste your entire allowance. You always do that, sis. No, I don't. Me? So, how about we put it to the test? After that, I went to my room, took a piece of paper and a pen, and hand-wrote an IOU contract that said Dad was to co-sign it as a witness and that Sis would reimburse me the $40 when she received her monthly stipend. People, you should always have a witness for contracts. After reading the article, Sis began to sniffle. After tearing it in two, she raced to her mother in tears once again. She did it each and every time. She did not escape. Hey sis, what is my little princess? My mom is crying. Now what had Craggle done? I asked her to sign an IOU in front of her father because she wanted to borrow money. Then she went crazy. Mom, and why would you act in that manner? She only wanted to take out a small loan. Me? To ensure she repays the money. Would you also sign the IOU? You little shit, Mom. Nothing needs to be signed by me. Just give her the money now. Me? Not without an IOU in place. Mom gets up and extends her arm as if to strike me, then pulls it back. Your father is exactly like you. A paper trail is required for everything. I detest it. I begin to ascend the stairs leading to my room. I think it's fortunate that I'm just like my dad at this point, Mom. It's much better than being exactly like you, akin to sissies, since you never accomplish anything worthwhile. What was that, Mom? You little shit? As soon as I locked my bedroom door, they began to charge up the stairs. My mother used to shout at me by flinging open the door to my bedroom. She threw her body forward and opened the door in a single sweeping motion back then. Additionally, she wasn't yet accustomed to the lock because I had only had it on my door for a short time. She attempted to open my door after I had locked the deadbolt, but she slammed into it with a rather loud thud. I then heard her collapse to the ground and begin to cry and groan in agony. She had slammed her face and body against the door quite forcefully. She got a bump on her forehead and a fat lip from the solid wood door, which was in the old-fashioned style. She was stretched out and hitting her fists on the floor when I opened the door. You little shit, Mom, you did this to me. Me? You did it to yourself. Mom, you are grounded. Get away of my sight. After that, I contacted Dad, and he simply grumbled over the phone about the whole scenario. He said I wasn't grounded, but I was still in great trouble for obtaining her, and to just let him deal with her when he got home. I ended up getting a nasty scolding from Dad, along with new duties and a cut to my stipend that month, but that was about it. After that day, every time Sis approached me for money, I asked her to sign an IOU. She definitely didn't like that update to my mother, sought to have me sent to military school, and faked my dad's signature. Blows up in her face after the last time I stood up to my mother, when she threatened to spank me, like she seemed to grow more afraid that if she did try to assault me, it'd end very poorly for her. So she primarily just shouted at me. She didn't lay a finger on me again until the events of one in my house years later. I thought nothing of it and just went with my typical schedule of school and our work. My 15th birthday was looming around the corner, and my parents surprised me with an engine kit for my bike to enable me navigate around town in. He stated I was better off saving for a vehicle than a scooter, and this would suffice in the meanwhile. I ended up agreeing with his argument and continuing saving for a car. However, a few days later, after mowing the yard, I was raking the grass off the back patio when I came across a booklet for a military school. It was beneath a chair and on the floor, close to where my mother enjoyed sitting and sipping wine. I waited until my dad got home to show him what I had discovered, since I had a sneaking suspicion that she was planning some sort of insane plot. Despite his anger, he refrained from making snap judgments. He then brought a leaflet to my mother and inquired about it. "Honey, Dad, what is this?" The side of the booklet makes Mom go white. "It isn't anything. It's something I've never seen." "Dad, really? Because you are aware that I would not let you to attempt to send Fraggle to military school." At that point, Mom snapped out of her act and screamed. "He must develop some self-control. I can't even spank him anymore since he's too big, and he always locks his door. I have no other choice than to discipline him for being a disrespectful brat in this way." Krangle did nothing wrong, Dad, when he confronted you about your foolish partiality. Because of you and the way you indulge her and allow her to take from her brother, our daughter is the brat, if anything. And this debate over sending Kraggle to military school is ended, in my opinion. And then, if you attempt to send him, so please help me. In any way I can, I'll slam the hammer down on you, Mom. What little control I still have in this house will probably be taken away by this entire family. Next. I might as well be nothing if I have nothing. You and I both know, Dad, that you'd sooner die than be nothing. Quit being so theatrical. The crackling is maturing, and he now has his own money and is his own man. Then Mom simply bounded out the room. Before school the following morning, I witnessed her frantically attempting to shove something into the trash can in the kitchen. I uncovered what she was trying to conceal as I waited for her to depart for work. It was a military school application, completely completed in her own handwriting. Both of the parents or legal guardians have to sign it. Additionally, the document included 2 signatures. I was able to identify Mom's, but the other one appeared to be a pathetic attempt to mimic Dad's. He took great delight in his intricate and elegant signature, which my mother could never replicate without appearing to be a fake. She must have realized that I saved the documents and subsequently presented them to my father when she was challenged and gave up on attempting to take me away. Despite his anger, he decided to overlook it as she had already done that. However, as a precaution, he kept the documents at his office. It was revealed a few months later that my mother was having an affair with a former high school boyfriend. For my dad, that was the final straw. He then filed for divorce, and months later, when he had purchased a new home, I moved in with him. By bringing forth the military school documents, on which my mother had falsified his signature, he expedited the divorce process very rapidly. It was more than that, too. He had proof that she had falsified his signature as well, a minimum of 1 application for a credit card. I can't remember any incident that made Mom worry about getting arrested for fraud. And because she accepted the majority of his stipulations, they moved through the legal system really quickly. Dad didn't want the home, so Mom got it, but she also wanted child support and alimony since Predictably, my sister decided to live with her. After 10 years of monthly payments, the judge granted my mom child support and a minimal amount of alimony. In any case, my sister's stipend was essentially covered by the alimony. Mom was quite upset about that and vowed to sue him again, but he used those fake signatures to pressure her into resigning for years. My sister sneered at me the day I moved out to live in my dad's new house, claiming smugly that I was going because my mother had informed her she was a princess and the more worthy sibling. Since I no longer cared, I simply shook my head and advised her to consider her options. Then, feeling at last as free as a bird, he left through the door. After that, my sister's weekly visits to my dad's house only made our relationship worse. Eventually, we stopped communicating for years, and I stopped truly enjoying going to my mom's house. In any case, she essentially destroyed my previous room to create a home office.